All right, ladies and gentlemen, I got a very special guest on the HSBC podcast. We have Mr. Dan Antonelli on today from KickCharge, who's going to blow all our minds with branding in the home service space. Dan, how are you doing this fine day?
What's up, David? How you doing, brother?
Excited to have you on, man. And you're really the branding guy, man. You've been at it, I want to say, for 3 decades. So like before we get into like what you built, I want to track it all the way back because I love hearing how brands and entrepreneurs got started in this beautiful journey of small business and entrepreneurship. So kind of tell us about the start, man.
Yeah, absolutely. So I started hand lettering, when I was probably 14 or 15 years old. So I was doing some signs, and then I started doing some truck lettering for different contractors. One of the first vehicles I did was actually it was for a chimney company, and then the second one I think I did was for a plumbing company, and I hand lettered them in my parents' backyard. And I don't know, maybe I got like $150 or $200 to do the lettering. I was in high school at the time, and then I got a job in a sign shop, which I absolutely loved that experience. And I was one of those people that, like, I literally knocked on every single sign shop in Staten Island, New York, where I grew up, and every single one of them shut the door on me. It was an industry where people didn't want to share how to do the trade. And so I was really disheartened. And then I literally found an ad in the newspaper. That's when people advertise for jobs in the newspaper. And it was a news sign shop looking for a sign painter. And at that point, I'm like 17 years old. I wouldn't consider myself to be a sign painter at that point, but I knew enough about how to do some lettering, and some pinstriping, which I was doing. And so I went there and I was like, listen, I'm like, dude, I will sweep the floors and I will work for free for you. I just need to be around this. And he's like, no, I have to pay you. And he gave me a little test to do some lettering, and I guess I did good enough to get the job. And oh my God, he just was such a craftsman, and he taught me so much about layout. He taught me so much about composition. One of the most talented sign artists. I'm still really good friends with him now today, which is wild. It's 40 years later. And he taught me that everything that came out of that shop should be at a certain level. And the level and the standard that he had, there was this magazine called Signcraft. And he said it has to be good enough to get in this magazine, everything that we do. And that always stuck with me. And I think that has kind of been my benchmark for work that we do here at the agency is everything that we do. I want it to be the best that we possibly can. And I also want to go with the notion that nothing we did yesterday is really good enough for today.
Mm.
So he taught me a lot of great lessons. My parents were like, well, listen, you really should go to college. I'm not sure being a sign painter would be a great thing for you. So I did go to college. I studied advertising while I was in college. I actually still painted signs and did lettering while I was in college. I graduated. I worked as a graphic designer in New York City for 5 years, and I started the business in my basement while I was still working. So I really, was totally hustling my ass off for like the last 2 years that I was there, trying to build up enough work so that I could quit my day job and do this full time. And last year of doing both was really, really hard. I mean, I was pulling in 80, 90 hours a week for like 6 or 7 months. And finally my wife was like, okay, it seems like you have enough business and you could quit. And that was, it was a scary thing because I had a great job, great benefits. And we didn't have children at the time. My wife was a school teacher, so she had health benefits. We had moved to New Jersey at that point. And so I took the leap, and, I stayed in my basement for the first probably 6 or 7 years. I had twins that were born, and I was happy that I could be kind of around them. And then I started having employees working in my basement, which is a little odd in
Yeah.
retrospect, thinking about that. And then we got our first office that we shared with another web development company. He had 2 employees and I had 4 at the time. And then we quickly outgrew that space and kind of kicked him out and took over the whole space. And then we quickly outgrew that. And then we built the facility that we're in now. So we're in a 5,300 square foot building that we built from scratch, which was pretty cool. And at this point, we actually have now over 60 employees, which also just kind of
Wow.
blows my mind because I'm like, I still have this. Sometimes I think about myself as being a schmuck in his basement. which is kind of how I used to describe myself very early on. And now it's
Yeah.
got all these people that actually work for me. But, we're blessed with
Wow.
an incredible team. Still just super grateful and fortunate to work in the trades and to, continue to change people's lives with our work. And that's, these people allow us to live our why every single day. And, just so grateful to be a part of that. So sorry, that was a really long winded explanation there. Sorry.
Man, I was gonna say a couple things, man. We've done over 230 episodes, and we usually ask people to intro themselves. I love how detailed that was, man. And I was gonna comment, you sound like a 30-year overnight success, man, in that you started in your basement with an idea. And I think those are the people I love bringing on our show, because our listener right now generally is not starting with a ton of seed capital or investment. And they're like, they see this beautiful office you have now, but that's why I always start the show like, no, 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 like tell us where it started, because that adds some relatability to the listener, which I think shows your story perfectly.
And I think too, David, the other thing too is when I was coming up with this idea. So my idea was, what if a business could go to one place and get the logo, the lettering for their vehicle, their business cards, their brochures, their website, their stationery, and it's all in one location. Because what drove me crazy from looking at what was happening is everything would be different. They'd go to one person for this, one person for that. Nothing ever matched. And I was like, why isn't there like a single source for a small business to get all these things under one roof? And I think that that's really, it's 30 years and we've really stayed true to that mission, is a single source to get all your marketing so that no matter where that customer interacts with your brand, it looks exactly the same. They know it's
Mhm.
from your company, whether it's a website, whether it's the uniform, the truck wrap, wherever they see it, they know, oh my God, that's, Joe's Plumbing or whatever the company name is. And so many people from day one, though, had said, what you're trying to do, nobody's going to really do that. Like there were so many people who just thought it was a terrible idea and didn't make sense. Or just focus on doing one thing and don't try to do all these other things. And I think I obviously proved a lot of people wrong about that, but I didn't have a ton of support early on from people that said, "Oh my God, this is an amazing idea.
Yeah.
This is
Yeah.
definitely going to work." And I can remember doing a business plan too and showing it to some family members, and they're like, "No one's going to sign up to do all these things all at once." And like, so, is there a lot of people that there's a lot of negative energy in the beginning, and I think to defend them to a certain extent, no one in my family had ever done anything entrepreneurial. So my dad worked for a large government agency. He was an electrician. And his father worked for the federal mint. My other grandfather was a postal worker, right? So there was no one in our family that had ever done anything for themselves. So
Yeah.
yeah,
That
if
makes
you're one of
sense,
those
man.
listeners, that are hearing some of that negative feedback from people, it's like you got to try to filter that out and just try to focus on what you believe is the mission and stay true to it.
Yeah, man. I think people give advice from their frame of reference too. No one had burned the ships and went into business for themselves. So yeah, it looks crazy. But I do love seeing a progression, man. You go 3 decades forward and you got an office full of people and a all one in-house brand is amazing. Man, I'm going through your book, and I don't plug many books, but I do want to mention your book, man. I'm almost done it. Branded, not blanded. I think, Dan, this is a great place to start if someone wants a master class in growing their business. I wanted to do one better though, is get through your book and bring you on the show. I want to hear kind of two common mistakes you see. You've done now, I think your book says over 2,000 brands that you have turned on their head. Amazing. What are two common mistakes that if someone's listening right now, you would bet $10,000 that the owner is making this common mistake in this one just because they've 30 years in, we see it all the time. What would you kind of nominate as point one and point two?
The first one is naming. Literally from day one, so many home service companies name their company incorrectly. And whether it's their last name, whether it's initials, those are two of the worst things you could possibly ever name your business. It doesn't mean you can't build a successful business if you've already sort of made that error. But it tends to be quite costly to overcome that initial challenge, right? So
Okay.
that's why the biggest chapter in the entire book is on naming, right? Because I was like,
Yeah.
I wish this was the book people read 6 months before they decide to go into business for themselves, because it'll save them so much aggravation later on, right? Because they'll be able to know, hey, listen, when most people start their business, they don't know what a business name should be. Like, there's no books that talk about how to name your home service business, right? There's probably not even a lot of podcast or information about it, right? So I always thought that the book was just a resource that I wish more people would read very early on in their entrepreneurial journeys. But even if you're 2, 3 years down the road and you read it, it's going to be very enlightening about that. I think,
Yep.
the other second thing, in terms of, you could say one thing that's common is you see a lot of people look at branding and they tend to think that the brands are designed and should be designed in a manner that is appealing to them. And I think that that's also a common error. It's not so much about what you personally like, it's about who you're actually selling to, which is a more critical benchmark. So people sometimes forget about who the actual audience is that the brand is designed for. So thinking about women as a demographic that a lot of home service companies are generally basically dealing with, I think 70 to 80% of all the home purchasing decisions are done by women. And so making sure that the brand speaks to that intended audience, I think, is something that a lot of people get wrong too.
Yeah, man, 70% and the other 30% just don't know the wife's deciding, man. For me, it's always the wife deciding the stuff around the home, man. And that's just here's the way I would say it, man. It's almost like we just coach a lot of cleaning businesses. It's almost like Bucket Bob goes into business to serve the Bucket Bob. So you end up with like Bob's, like, I guess let's start there. Why does Bob go with Bob's window cleaning in the first place? Is it just a lack of education, or like what's the why behind that in the first place?
Yeah, I think it's just they just don't know what they don't know, So, even initial base brands, JB Power Washing, why would I ever remember that? How is that going to live in someone's mind later on when they need service? Because the other important part of it is that 95% of the people that see your brand, let's say it's on a neighbor's driveway or driving down the street, they don't actually need your service right now, but they may need it next month or in 6 months. How do we live in their minds? And that's why the initial base brands are so hard, because there's nothing to connect the dots. And that's why the visual aids are things that are used to help people remember something about your particular brand. So we just designed a brand for a company called Rinse Prince. And we have a mascot that looks like a prince, and he's spraying some water. Like it's so you see the mascot, you remember, okay, that he's a prince, Rinse Prince, power washing. Like, so these are all just the things that we use to try to help people remember that brand. And that also which helps them make them less dependent on Google to deliver that. So if they type in a branded keyword search, amazing. If they type in power washing near me, shit, now I got to pay Google for that lead, right? So trying to build something that is memorable and sticky is much harder to do with an initial base brand or even a last name base brand.
So good, man. And even in today's day and age, like this is going to go live spring of 2025. If we fast forward then 2026, 2027, in a world that's getting noisier and more stuff flying at us, I think the brand standing out in the consumer's mind is every day we go to bed, it gets a little bit more important.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's so costly online to get those leads and to buy those leads. And I think the notion of becoming 5 Mile famous within your own community is often lost on people too. So they're not focused on the efforts to make their brand a household name within their own community. They're not investing in community events. They're not going to different parades. They're not sponsoring softball teams. Like, all those things pay dividends. They may not seem like, oh my God, I can attribute that lead exactly to that specific task. However, again, it's all about living in their minds for later and making sure that you're the first person they think about when they actually need that service. So I think you see a lot of people shifting more of their efforts, especially to some of those grassroots types of activities, whether it's even just simple things like site signs and door hangers and things like that, because the digital space is becoming so competitive and so costly. And it's just a much more economical way to get your name in front of people. That's why the truck wrap is so important. Like, dollar for dollar, you can't promote your business for less money than a truck wrap. Honestly, you pay $5,000 for a van wrap that's going to last you 5,000 years. So $1,000 a year, you tell me where you're going to have your brand, have hundreds or thousands of impressions per day. Like, there's nothing that is more economical than a truck wrap that's done well. So investing in a grassroots thing, I think, is often overlooked. Some people just think it's easier to throw money at Google, and sometimes it's physically easier, but it's so much more costly in the long run.
Yeah, man. I think it's so easy to market online, but to generate like effective returns and fish your ideal avatar. Like I want to, you sent me, man, a signed copy of your book and you gave me this beautiful creative piece. I want to turn your attention, man, to our next thing I want to talk about. Skeptics say, Dan, like you own the branding company. Cool. I get it. But I could get an ROI if I go Facebook, Google ads. You've got a picture here of Hutton. I'll hold up for YouTube. Look at that, 342% growth in 1 year after rebranding. I want you to address the skeptics, man, who say, I don't know if it's worth spending all this money on what ROI am I going to see from a brand? Because I think, Dan, you get some people that love to see their ego and their brand everywhere, and that's one thing. But I'm actually talking about dollar for dollar. If we rebrand in 3 years, 5 years, 10 years, what kind of ROI could we see? Do you mind addressing that point?
Yeah, and I think it's a great question to ask because people, we're certainly not. I think we provide an amazing value for what we charge for our work, but some people are like, oh my God, it's so expensive. And I say, well, let's look at how much poor branding costs your business, and let's look at it from that perspective. And then you decide whether or not you think it's not a good investment to invest in good branding. So how much does it cost you in average tickets? How much does it cost you in lowered booking rates? How much does it cost you in lowered close rates? What does it cost you in recruitment costs because no one wants to work for you because you don't even look like a company I want to be associated with? And then how much is it costing you to be overspending on your marketing because you're virtually invisible in your own community that you're serving? So when you start looking at that and you say, well, $20,000 for a branding package, oh my God, that's crazy, man. Like I can go on Fiverr and I could get this done for $50 or something like that. And I mean, not to trash Fiverr, but you can't get it done for $50 on Fiverr. You get it done well. And I think when you really start looking at what the poor branding cost you, it becomes a lot easier to understand why that investment makes sense. And we've had people that they've done nothing, but nothing operationally has changed except the brand. And yet they're able to charge 15, 20, 25% more on their average tickets. Well, why? Well, because Mrs. Jones believes there's a reason to pay a premium for your service. It's like, well, why would I buy a Mercedes when I could get, a Chevy? Well, I believe that the Mercedes is going to be a better quality car. And so I'm willing to pay more for that because I believe that the experience will be better. That's why guys run into so many problems when they're trying to upsell or sell at a higher average ticket because they don't look like they deserve to be paid more. So Mrs. Jones is looking at your branding. She's looking at your truck. She's looking at what you showed up in, your business card, your uniforms. And there's nothing there to support the notion on why you deserve to be paid more. The real issue that most businesses have is a lot of guys actually provide a great service. Like after they're done, maybe the homeowner is convinced that it's a great company. But everything that branding is trying to do is control what they believe before you get to have that opportunity. I'm trying to control what Mrs. Jones thinks before you get to ring the doorbell. What if I could have her believe that you're the best power washing company ever? What if I can have her believe that, oh my God, this service from start to finish is going to be premium. They're going to clean up perfectly. Everything is going to be dialed. Like, what if I could have her believe that before you ring the doorbell? Do you think there's a better chance you're going to close that sale? Or close that sale at a higher rate. So, you could look at some of these companies and listen, I'm a big data guy. I love looking at data because it's one thing to have pretty brands. It's again, how do the brands translate into ROI, right? That's what everyone wants to know. So, we even looked at a company that has done a lot of web design and digital marketing for brands that we've created. So I said to him, listen, run some numbers for me comparing 25 brands that were done by KickCharge and compare that with 25 other companies you've done the website that do not have a KickCharge brand, and tell me what the numbers say, right? So this is like, to me, a great thing that illustrates some of that. So on average, the 25 companies that had a KickCharge brand generated over 500 inbound branded keyword searches per month compared to 50 for the companies that we hadn't done the branding. So those are 10x. So it's
10 times
the number of people are typing in the brand name rather than, again, air conditioning repair near me. They're typing the brand name. Now, okay, so that's cool. Great. You got them, over 500 more branded keyword searches. Great. Now what happens when they get to the website? What's the conversion rate when they're on the website? And the conversion rate for companies that had a Kickcharge brand was 12% versus 6% with a non-Kickcharge brand. So again,
2 times.
double the number of conversions. And why is that? Well, partly because the people coming to the site already know the brand, they like the brand, they trust the brand. And that's all what's going into why the brand within the community and how it's perceived is so critical. If they've never heard of you, they've never seen the van on your neighbor's driveway, they've never seen your guy, one of your guys in uniform at the supermarket, or they don't seem local to, like, all those things play a role into whether or not she believes that she should actually take the next step and maybe try to book a call with you. So it's very interesting looking at the data, and we've done so much with Searchlight, which is another aggregator of data. And you could even see things like booking rates and close rates, and how that's affected by the brand. So one of our most successful brands is a company called Grasshopper in Albany. It's a heating and air conditioning company. Their booking rate is like 93%. So 93% of every single phone call that comes in gets booked for a job. And then and that's where the data tells a lot of the story, right? So if some of the people that are listening, if you're on a system that tracks some of that data, that's often where you find out where you can really leverage a better brand, because sometimes the data is giving you those clues. If your booking rate is low, if your close rate is low, if your average tickets are low, those are some of the indicators that there's a problem with the perception of your business that isn't translating well. It doesn't reflect who you are today.
Yeah. No, man, that's so well said. At the end of the day, I think your answer almost flips my question on the head of like, how could you not see an ROI from a rebrand? I guess I want to hit that point, man. I see it really active in Tommy Mello's Facebook group. I love when people come on with branding. Hit up Dan, hit up Dan. It's like, man, this is awesome. You got raving fans. Would you agree that it's still the mass market of home service businesses that, like, the people that get it, that they're like, yeah, Kickcharge makes sense. Business coaching, it makes sense. Let's go. Like what we see, it's like the 1%. Like it's still the 99 that are like, I'll rebrand one day, 20K. It's a lot of money to pay. I'm not saying it's a little amount of money, but you're missing out on a lot. Is that your big data guy? Do you see that as well? That a lot of Kickcharge, you just want to work with kind of the top 1 to 2% of the market and let everyone else read your book, get the value, and they will self-select and walk in your world when ready? Or do you see things differently?
Well, I think, it's ironic because people have said to me, well, like, you guys are doing so many brands. Like, do you ever think that you're going to like oversaturate the notion of disruptive branding and then suddenly no brand is disruptive anymore because you've done some more? And we do about, I mean, last year we did about 250 brands for the year. But I think it's really funny. Part of our process is to research the competitive landscape of every company we're doing the branding for. And they'll say, here's our top, 7 competitors. And it's still more unlikely that any of them have a decent brand. And so you have a lot of companies that achieve a measure of success, and that measure of success becomes the reason why they think that they can't ever change. But you could look at Tommy Mello, who rebranded at $30 million in revenue. Like, who the hell's saying, hey, let's rebrand at 30 million in revenue because it sucks and it's not working? Like, not many people are going to take that leap and say it's not working. But he knew it didn't represent what he had evolved into. It wasn't good enough to get him to where he wanted to go. And, 4 years after, they added another $200 million in revenue onto that number.
Yeah.
So I think a lot of people make the mistake of thinking that the measure of success that they've achieved with whatever they have is the actual reason why they should never make a change. And instead, I look at it like, oh my God, like sometimes I look at companies like Tommy at 30 million. I'm like, dude, like, I can't believe you're at 30 million with that, right? Yeah. That is freaking amazing. That shows from an operational perspective, you are crushing it. Now imagine if the brand looked as good as the way everything was run. Like, we would kill it. So I look at those things, and usually that's when I get excited because I'm like, oh man, it would be so cool if you looked as good as you actually performed. Like that's a home run to me.
So if you want to take the next step in scaling your business to the next level, you're going to want to check out our Scaling Blueprint program. We've worked with hundreds of home service business owners now all around the world, where we've actually built out the systems for them in their customized branding and provided them with coaching from our 7-figure coaching team. If you want to learn more about that opportunity, then go ahead and click the link right here. Now let's get back to the episode.
But there's still so many people that just don't get it. You even see in the PE side, like, oh my God, like some of the conversations I have with PE, it's bizarre to me because they're guys that are amazing at reading numbers, but most of them don't understand the value of a brand. And
Why do you think that is?
My mind. I don't know. It's bizarre to me. Like, I think all they see is the numbers of how much it's going to cost to rebrand, instead of seeing their direct relationship with how much their marketing spend is and how they can actually lower that marketing spend. And we've seen guys that when they go to exit, they're actually being paid more because the branding is all done. Like the PE knows that they actually won't have to change anything because the branding is on point. And the marketing spend is reflected in that. You know, when people say, and you hear this, David, there got to be people to tell you, how much do I need to spend on my marketing?
Yeah.
You know,
yeah.
Well, 10%, 12%, 13% if you really want to grow. And then I see the guys that are spending 10, 11, 12%. And I know why you're spending 10 or 11, 12%, because your branding isn't good.
Yeah.
You know, so that's the other piece of it too. You see a lot of companies overspending on their marketing because there's no reason at all why Mrs. Jones would ever remember your brand name. So
totally,
you know, the quote in the book is overspending on advertising is the tax you pay for being unremarkable. Like that's what goes into it. So I think there's still a ton of opportunity to do disruptive things, especially in you know, the power washing space. Because most of those guys, I mean, listen, go on Google and type in power washing logo. Yeah, you're gonna see, you know,
all the same
logos that look exactly the same. So if that's what your logo looks like, why would anyone remember yours among the sea of sameness, right? So the idea of doing something that's disruptive tends to work really well.
Man, I don't know that we'll be alive when you oversaturate the market with brands. I mean, you're getting more people coming in and going through the same. I'll just share a story, man, because when I got coaching started, I worked with this individual, Chris, and he had a brand which was kind of like clever. It's called Call a Plumber, right? And he was doing about 100K, and he listened to my podcast, and he started to grow like really quickly. And he came to me, Dan, with your name. I'd never heard of you. This guy, Dan, he's charging me this much. I'm like, man, that's a lot to pay. I kind of looked up. I said, Chris, this is pros and cons. Make your decision. He jumped in with you guys. You rebranded to Yellow Submarine Plumbing. Killer brand, man. He's got multiple yellow trucks now ripping around. Good buddy of mine. And I look back to that, man, and think, good on Chris for having the courage back in the day to dive in, part with this hard-earned money, because he saw the big picture for the brand. So do you mind touching on, Dan, like, was Chris too small to jump in at 100? Because you got a lot of listeners right now doing 100, 200, 300, 400, 500 grand in around there. Is it ever too small to rebrand? Or like, what do you usually see when people come into your world?
So, you know, I would say on average, most of our clients are, you know, probably 1 to 3 million, but we do have a lot that are under that range. And I think, again, the question becomes, is how much is it going to cost to redo it correctly in 2, 3, 4 years, maybe when you have grown, and how much wasted spend is going to be on your marketing in the meantime. So what we've tried to do to try to make it essentially more affordable for people, the biggest obstacle is like obviously coming up with the money to do this. And we said, well, what if we could offer financing? And we worked so hard to try to find banks, figure out a way to do it. And ultimately the banks were like, well, there's nothing to repossess, so we can't lend them money to do branding. So we're like, okay, well, you know what? If we believe so much in this, why don't we offer financing, right? Why don't we make it so that you pay us half up front and then the rest you can pay over 12 months or 18 months? Because I believe the power of the brand, and I'll put my own money on the line for it, because, you know, I don't want to say I've never seen it not work, but we don't work with a lot of companies that from an operational standpoint don't have their shit together, so to speak. And so I think as soon as you can do it, you know, sometimes you're bootstrapped. And then I would just say, try to take as many tips from the book and resources. We've got tons of YouTube videos, me talking about the topic. Try to educate yourself as much as you possibly can. Because here's what I'll tell you too, is when you go to some of those low cost alternatives, if you go in there armed with as much knowledge as you can, you have a higher likelihood of trying to arrive at something that at least is decent enough to get you going, right? And I think that that's sometimes the sad thing that I wish some of the people that are doing some of this low cost branding truly understood more about the topic. It sounds bizarre, right? This is what they do for a living and they don't really understand what they're selling. But I always tell people, listen, if you can't afford Kickcharge, I totally understand. That's totally fine. Just read the book, watch as much of me online as you possibly can, learn as much as you can about the topic, because chances are you're going to become more knowledgeable than whoever you're going to hire to do this for you. And the more knowledge you have, the better the outcome will be. So I just say, study as much as you can. If it's not practical to be able to afford us, but the sooner you can get professional branding, I think the better, because it's just going to be much cheaper in the long run, for sure.
Yeah, it's so good, man. And I do think, like, I've been in my business for myself 16 years. Like, I do think a recurring theme that I've yet to be proven wrong is, like, you do get what you pay for in life in every regard, from a meal to a coffee to a company you work with. And man, when you shipped me this stuff in the mail, I literally sent it to my marketing coordinator. I'm like, you can't see this, but the book, it just feels so good. And the colors, and even this, man, this isn't like a 99-cent Vistaprint special. Like, this is like super nice. And I do have to compliment you, man, how your book reads. It reads almost like a magazine. And I think a lot of home service business owners, myself included, we struggle with holding our attention for a while. That you've done a great job putting in bullet points and pictures and headings that makes me, someone with a squirrely brain, actually like sit down and want to read it. So I think it was super well designed. And I think for a listener looking at a masterclass, I think you've done a great job putting that together.
Thanks. Yeah. And that's exactly why I wrote it the way I wrote it. I'm not a guy that likes to use big fancy words. A lot of these marketing books, a lot of these other branding books, some of the shit flew over my head. And I'm like, I want to write it in a way that they can easily understand and digest, and then take action with it, and learn from it. The thing I hate to see sometimes, some of the mistakes that are made for home service companies. Like, I want everyone to win. I don't care if you're a client or not a client, you deserve the best opportunity to win. And if this helps you avoid some of those mistakes, then I'm winning, and I honestly, truly believe that. I mean, you see when someone posts on Facebook and on Tommy's page, and they're asking for my advice. I mean, I'm going to give as much advice as I possibly can, because you're about to drop $5,000 on that truck wrap, and chances are it's not even going to work at all. But let me try to give you some tips to try to make it better, so you have the best opportunity for success. Because I know how hard it is for a smaller guy to come up with $5,000-$10,000 on this initiative, and then to have it not work is the worst part of it. And we've had to redo some of these other companies' work, and it's sad to me, because somebody basically trusted you with their livelihoods, and you failed them. And it sucks. Like, I hate to see it. And so, like, that's exactly why I wrote the book. Listen, I think I make like $3 on every book that's sold on.
Yeah, you don't make money in books, but you actually pay a full marketplace.
Money actually being made on it. But I'm just like, you know what? The trades have been amazing to me, to my team, to my family. And if this can help somebody, then that's winning for me. Like, honestly.
Yeah. Two more things, man, I want to hit on. Number one is, we've heard the stat, and I want to hear your take, that our brands need 7 touch points for a market. They see a sign, they see a vehicle. Question one, is that stat legit, or like, what do you see in your data, and how does that methodology play into like having a brand and a consumer actually seeing you everywhere? Like, I've had buddies text me, we see your trucks everywhere. I'm like, yeah, we only have 3 of them, but like, they're just in this radius. So what have you seen for data with like touch points for an ideal avatar?
Yeah, I think, the theory behind the book is the notion of why disruption is so critical. Now that data that talks about I think it's 7 to 10 touches or something like that, but that data doesn't necessarily make a distinction between the type of branding that people are viewing. So in my mind, it's really, really important to make the most of every single touch opportunity that you have, and make it as sticky as possible. So, when we talk about colors in the book and we talk about brand strategies that are more disruptive, it's all meant to trigger the brain to process it in a different manner than they're used to seeing all over. So, in the HVAC space, using sun and snowflakes is not likely to be remembered because it's way too common, or red and blue arrows. So why would Mrs. Jones ever remember that? But would she remember a penguin or a grasshopper or something like that? And how does that connect in her mind? So I think the data behind it is accurate in that particular sense, but it doesn't necessarily account for the notion of how to basically improve your odds with that data by doing something that's very disruptive. That's why color is so critical too. Like, you drive down a highway and you see all these billboards and they're all the same, and then suddenly you've got one that's apple green and purple. Well, that triggers something. It's the same theory with Seth Godin and Purple Cow. And that's all about what we're trying to do, is build a bunch of purple cows in the marketplace so that people will actually connect with them and remember them later on.
Was it you who, this is a bit of a sidestep, Tommy posted in his group and I threw a sassy comment up. It was like his ass hanging off a billboard and I said,
Yes.
A1 bun since day one. Was that your idea?
So yeah, that billboard I created for Tommy. And I think it says the view is pretty cool, but has the garage look or something like that. And again, that's just, you see a sea of billboards and what are you going to put? A picture of a garage door and say, call us for your garage door repair. Okay, cool. Like, why would I look at that again? But it came about that I found that photo of Tommy in a photo shoot. We were using Tommy's photo for some other marketing materials, and on the screen I saw that picture of him posing, and it's kind of his butt, and he's looking behind it. I'm like, oh my God, I got this crazy idea. And so I designed this billboard and I texted it over to him. I actually texted it to Bree, his fiance. And I was like, do you think Tommy would go for something like this? Because I wanted to get her buy-in first.
Yeah, smart.
And she's
It's
like,
so
oh
funny.
my God, I'm dying. And I'm like, okay, this would be pretty cool. And then Tommy was all about it. And, interestingly enough, like, some of the people on his staff were not too excited about the notion. And I think a lot of times people want to revert back to that safe space. Like, this feels too different. This doesn't feel the way I think a garage door company should do their marketing. And when you go into that safe space, you're going into that space that is typically much more forgettable. And I'm not saying do shock value for the sake of shock value, but I'm just saying try to think sometimes a little bit outside what you expect a brand to look like. So if you're a power washing, try to think beyond having a wand in your logo, because everyone's got a wand in their logo. What about if it was an elephant and the elephant was spouting out the water? Wouldn't that be a little bit more memorable than the wand that everyone uses, that you can't even own that idea, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, that was kind of a funny story.
I love it, man. Yeah, there's a huge lesson in being different, I think, in a very crowded, kind of ready, bloody ocean, I think is a way to put it. So, and even, man, just on camera here, you see you've got your yellow touches on your chair, on your hat. I'm seeing a mug, the ledge. Like, do you mind touching on it? I don't know what your core values are, but I feel like there's one around excellence / world class / like being very professional in your dealings. Am I correct in any of that? Because I just see the brand kind of touches all over your office there.
Yeah, I mean, certainly the brand lives and breathes throughout this entire space. So you walk into our office, the carpet, I don't know if you could see carpet, but the carpet outside actually has planks of yellow as part of it, and the flooring has yellow in it. All the windowsills are gray. So
Yeah.
we try to live and breathe the notion of brand and make sure that it's integrated in everything that we possibly do. Today is probably a very rare day that I'm actually not wearing a branded shirt. I have an appointment with my wife after, so I was like, all right, well, I won't be branded today. But we do really, I'm super obsessed about it, to the point where I had a blue Corvette and I bought it because I liked the colors originally, but then I was just like, this is like the only thing in my life that is off brand. So I sold it and I got a yellow Corvette last year. So now I felt like I was more comfortable now because I was on brand.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. Yeah, it kind of comes in just who you are and how you interact is great. I got one more, man. I know we're cutting against the clock. You've grown a very successful company, a large company. I want to hear your take on personal development and how you have invested into Dan, because I think your brand's bigger than yourself now, yes, but I do think people buy into ultimately an attractive character with a vision to plant a flag and say, hey, here's where we're going. And I saw a great post you made on LinkedIn maybe a year ago, celebrating business success. You were over 40 staff at the time. I thought, this guy's really crushing it. So I'd love to hear, has personal development been a key part in your growth? Did it just happen? I'm curious your take on that before we wrap up.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's a great question. I think I've learned, especially over the last 4 or 5 years, to trust more in the team and to always make sure that I'm surrounding myself with people that are way smarter than I am. And that benchmark is probably pretty low. So then maybe that's not a high standard. But I think, I went through some stuff on a personal side. I had some issues with my heart about 4 years ago. And I thought I was gonna have I had double bypass surgery. Like, I'm grateful to be here because I probably shouldn't be here today, but I went to that surgery thinking I'm gonna be back at work in like a week. Like, this isn't a big deal. And I guess I don't really tell you too much about how traumatic open heart surgery is.
Yeah.
So, I found myself I couldn't work and I had to rely on the people here. And what I found is that they crushed it. Like, they didn't need me. They rose to the occasion. And from that point on, I placed so much more responsibility and trust in them that allowed me to kind of step back a little bit. And it also allowed me to step back from doing the things that I hated, that I didn't want to be involved in, and trust on them. So I really learned more about trusting the leadership that you've hired. You've hired these amazing people. Let them do the job for which they were hired, and they will rise to the occasion. And so I have an operations manager. She's the chief operating officer and also client experience officer.
Mm.
And just to give you a ballpark, so we went from 27 years or 26 years to get to about 3.5 million in revenue. And then we've gone from $3.5 million in revenue since I had my heart surgery to $10.5 million in revenue
Wow.
in 4 years.
Wow.
So like, it was slow, slow, slow and steady, right? And then there was kind of a big change. And I think it was just a change in mindset for me. And I really also just tried to be someone that led from the notion of gratitude, gratitude for my people, gratitude for my clients. And when you're almost dead, essentially, you learn to really cherish the gift that you have of being still here. So it sort of became my mission is like, you know what, my work here is not done in terms of how many lives I want to impact with our work, how many lives I want to change. And so I think I've just built a culture and a team of people that are really, really energized by the work that we do and the impact it has on our clients' lives. And some of these people came from backgrounds where they work for big ad agencies and they never saw the impact of their work.
Yeah.
And so we're so diligent about sharing those success stories with them. When we get a text from a client or I get a text from our client, I'm sure to share that in our Slack channel. So everyone is reminded of the impact that our work has on these people. So it's not just a cool truck wrap. Like, this is Bob and his wife, and they are just trying to hire 3 more people for next year. It's our responsibility to make sure we give them the best chance of success.
Yeah.
Continuing to remind them about that mission that we have and our why. So I think focusing a lot more over the last 4 or 5 years on our why has been a really, really important thing. And certainly, I hang out a lot with Tommy, learned so much from him. His book Elevate, I think, is a great book.
Mm.
And I think a shift in terms of what can I be doing more for my people instead of how can I be doing more for myself and shifting
Nice.
that mindset. Like, I'm more about like, how do I help my employees win and create an environment that they can grow, feel like they're part of something amazing, has been a big, big part of it.
It's amazing, man. Yeah. I mean, you build a $3 million business. It's a great life for you and your wife and your kids. So I think a 8-figure business and growing multi 8-figure business, you're now providing for so many more people. And that's got to be exciting. I am curious though, man, like you had your surgery. Was there anything else big that caused, like, it almost seemed like a, not overnight, but within a year, like a 4x growth? Did your brand just hit more product market fit, or was it truly that, guys, Dan was out and just I came back and have honed my leadership skills?
Yeah, I mean, I think we were gaining the reputation within the industry. but we had so many really high profile successes. I mean, Tommy was a high profile success. We did the branding for Gettle from Ken Goodrich, which is another pretty high profile brand. And I think we just became known as the go-to company for home service branding. And the reputation, like you spoke of it earlier, that we have and the fans that we've built, I think that's where it really started snowballing. So you had people that literally, like, if there's a Facebook post of branding, they're tagging us on it or
Yeah.
tagging me on it. So we've created these super fans because they recognize how crucial our role has been in their success. And those are the people that are just going to be our evangelists for sure.
Yeah, it's amazing, man. Your product has become the best marketing, and that is the best way to build a business. So we're gonna let you run, Dan. We're gonna let you go go see your wifey for your appointment. Before we let you go, brother, best way for a listener to learn about you. I will be linking up the show notes to buy your book direct. But do you hang out on Instagram, YouTube? If a listener's like, this guy's legit, I want to learn more, how do they get in touch with Dan?
Yeah, so you can hit me up on Facebook. It's just Dan Antonelli. You should see a picture of me there. I may not be able to accept a friend request anymore because I think I'm at that 5,000 cap, but you could still follow me and you could certainly message me. And then you can just go to kickcharge.com too if you want to learn more and fill out a contact form, and happy to help. And if you've got something you're working on and you want my feedback on it, just send me a message. I'm always happy to try to give as much feedback. No strings attached. I'm not a hard sell kind of guy. I'm not going to try to sell you on anything, but if I can help you improve something that someone else is doing, I'm more than happy to do that too.
That's why people love you in this industry, man. You're just a real dude, not trying to always make money here and there. You lead with value, and the right people come into your world and work with KickCharge. So, Dan, I appreciate your time, brother. There we are right at time here. And thanks for dropping all these gold nuggets, man. It's going to help a lot of people.
Awesome. Appreciate you, David. Thank you so much.